Today's question is, what should I do if my employer asks me to sign an arbitration agreement after I report sexual harassment? This is an interesting and actually somewhat complex question. So you're still working at the company, you've reported sexual harassment, you haven't been fired yet, and they're asking you to sign an arbitration agreement. Is it a sign it or we'll fire you agreement? Let's just assume that it is, because most of them are. And let's think a little bit about why the employer might be doing this. They think you're about to bring a claim. They think you're going to get an attorney involved, and they want to force the claim into arbitration to reduce the value of the claim. Now, will this tactic be successful? Well, it might. This is an unsettled area of the law, in my opinion. So there is a federal law now called Ending Forced Arbitration, which purports to end the forced arbitration of sexual harassment disputes, but only when the arbitration agreement is a pre-dispute agreement. So I think the employer is trying to tee up an argument that you reported the sexual harassment and then signed the arbitration agreement, and therefore the agreement is not pre-dispute. I would argue against that. I don't think a dispute arises until you filed a claim or threaten to file a claim, and simply reporting sexual harassment isn't threatening to file a claim. But they're going to have an argument. So what do you do in that scenario? Well, for one, I would strongly advise you to avoid signing that if at all possible. Now, I understand if they're about to fire you, maybe that's not an option. But I would start looking for other forms of employment. Now, let's say you refuse to fire the agreement and they do fire you. Is that retaliation for complaining about sexual harassment? I think there's going to be arguments on both sides there. I think the employer is going to say, no, we fired her because she refused to sign the arbitration agreement. On the other hand, if you were talking about causation, would they ever have forced you to sign the arbitration agreement if you hadn't complained about sexual harassment? I'm guessing not. So again, arguments on both sides. So this is kind of like a situation where you have to evaluate your options. Do you have a foot out the door? Can you quickly get another job? Do you already have another job lined up? In that case, I might leave, or I might refuse to sign the arbitration agreement and get them to fire you. If you need to stay, I would maybe consult with an attorney first, but you might have to sign that arbitration agreement. I think this might be a new employer tactic to try to get around the Ending Forced Arbitration Act and forcing people to arbitrate. If you get women who report sexual harassment to sign arbitration agreements after they reported the harassment, those agreements are arguably not pre-dispute agreements. So I bet you in the next few years we're going to see that issue funnel up into the courts, and we're going to get some decisions on that issue as more aggressive employers begin employing this tactic to keep claims out of court.